Good afternoon, ladies
Hey,
and
Pumpkin.
gentlemen. This is JT with Legacy Art Games, and we are
Cat.
back with more tabletop campaigns. Today, we are returning to Odyssey of the Dragonlords with GM Tompson, our good friend who we were with yesterday for Rime of the Frostmaiden. And today we're going to be exploring the realm of the Goddess of Dreams and a mysterious metal cube. What's inside? Well, we're gonna find out. That said, I'm turning it over to GM Tompson. Okay, GM, it's all yours.
Yeah. Alright. Thank you. Alright, so guys, shall we start with the recap since we missed last week's session?
Yes.
And I believe Snack didn't play on the session before that, correct?
No, it was last week.
Alright.
I was
yeah.
here for the one before it.
Okay, alright. So, last that we left off, you guys had traveled from Praxis, the Tower of Sidon, all the way to Midrose and accomplished a bunch of talking there. Checked out on your own belongings over at Midrose, including your Fortress of the Dragonlords. It is now staying at the cliff about a mile or so away from Midrose. Makes it quite a view. You guys talk with a bunch of people, and after having about half a day break, if even, after defeating Sidon, you were off onto the Outers once again to face the new threat. The new threat being Lutheria. You guys have decided to go back to the massive cyclone in order to go into the Nether Sea once again and try to face Lutheria once and for all. There was a bit of a question once you guys got there after making it past the tornado, once again, the cyclone. I guess tornado is not the correct term. The cyclone.
Yeah.
After making it past the cyclone, descending into the dreamlike realm of Lutheria, you were talking for a bit, trying to remember. Yeah, Whirlpool. They were trying to remember where Lutheria exactly was, but you realized that you didn't necessarily know for sure. So you decide to investigate the area around. In this region of the Nether Sea, you found a few different things that were quite unorthodox. The first one was that as you transformed, if I'm not mistaken, we had Lith transform into a bird, yes, to see from afar and to report back. Yep, giant eagle went around traveling through this Nether Sea, and I think the perception check itself was something crazy like a 28 or something, and yet it was not revealed where the actual location was. You had no sign of Lutheria herself, but you did manage to see all the other things that were hidden within the Nether Sea. The most interesting thing is that there are plenty of massive gargantuan cubes. They seem to be etched with all sorts of runes around it in a language that is almost unrecognizable. There are a total of about 5 cubes, one of them being the biggest cube of them all, which is where you guys are currently staying at. Or right next to it. When it comes to how these cubes look, it seems like there are runes that have been that deeply etched into each of the faces that you can see. And the bottom face is level with the surface of the sea, but the top face is some 100 feet above, right? So it's like a 100-foot side, a 100-foot height cube. And they are basically hanging from these 5 massive chains. And the chains themselves don't seem to connect to anything. They just disappear into the phantom of something between a low rumble and a high whistle. Other than that, that was what you guys were currently checking out. But while on the trip as the Giant Eagle, you spotted 2 more things of interest. Which was, there was 2 other islands. One of them, quite close to where you guys are standing, there are 3 huge statues which reminded you all of a story that you had heard Kira tell you once before. But you have decided you have not investigated it yet up close. And finally, there was another island that seemed to have this massive column of stone in the center of the island that once again connects into never-ending space over at the top of the Nether Sea. It doesn't seem to connect to anything. It just continuously goes up.
What? Sorry?
It's just like the chains. It's not connected to anything, right? In this island over here, it's like a small rocky island, but from the middle there is this. There are these petrified trees, and one of the trees just seems to keep going on and on and on.
Oh, okay.
You haven't approached it. You haven't investigated it from up close to get any finer details of what it could be. And yes, at that moment you guys were discussing what to do, and you were a bit at a loss. And Vith, considering that this is the Land of Dreams in a way, and since it's Solitarius realm, decided that perhaps sleeping might be the answer. Perhaps the Land of Dreams will guide you to your actual path. It was very quickly realized that was a terrible idea, because as you fell asleep, you found yourself in a nightmare, being pursued by none other than Asterios.
Yes.
A never-lasting maze and Asterios just kept pursuing Vith for what seemed to be hours, but Vith nonetheless managed to win the fight. As the fight was over, you found yourself waking up from your nap. The rest was not successful in such a way that would have recovered any of your short rest resources. You've only slept for even though you slept for about an hour or so. And that's where we're picking back up. You guys were still discussing what you could potentially do. Yeah, sure. I might have forgotten something. Go ahead. Yes.
Yep.
You are correct. There was a very high check that someone made on a perception check, followed by a nature check that was incredibly high as well.
I think it was
and Kavan himself realized that there were noises of purple worms on the inside of this cube. There were not only these two purple worms, which were massive, that seemed to be stuck in some way, but there was also a dozen or so. There was just like the shittering of multiple worms on the inside, probably infants.
Yeah.
That was one of the things
cube, or was it another cube?
It was on the biggest cube, yes. It was on the biggest cube. You're not quite sure if there are no signs of a struggle from the sound. That's what I was saying. I will also post a picture of the cube that you guys are currently by. As you can see, those black lines are not necessarily lines, but actual extra runes. And on the top there is that the same what's it called? The same hourglass that I described previously. That seems to still indicate that there is quite a long time until this is open. And now I ask you guys, as Vith wakes up from the dream, Asterios is right there. I imagine you freak out for just a tiny second, seeing Asterios close by. Vit says, you're really scary. Do you want to just stare you only your answers? Which tilting is that? Right. So tell me, guys, while Vith was going on for the nap, there was some mention about going to the smaller cubes, right? Because we can jump back at that point beforehand.
Some people did want to check them out,
Yeah.
yes.
Mhm.
To see if there was any difference in when they would open.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes,
and
you
there
can
were
see that.
there were talks about maybe checking if the what's it called, the hourglass could be moved in any way to either prolong or shorten the duration.
Yes. You can certainly investigate both of those things. Which one would you like to do first?
I think we wanted to check the other cubes first.
Smaller cubes first. Very well, very well. You guys, while Vith is taking her nap a bit before she wakes up, you guys go around traveling through the Nether Sea, approaching another of the smaller cubes that is closer by. And the story is pretty much the same, yet it is not nearly as big. It is still impressively big, right? Just not 100 feet on each edge. It's maybe more like 70. Which is not necessarily that big of a difference, it's just smaller. When you put your ears, it also seems to share a resemblance on everything else that looks apart. But when you look towards the hourglass that's on top, it seems that the time doesn't correspond to the same time that is on the other one. So the center chain has this hourglass made from transparent adamantine that seems to be constantly dripping just this fine, small grain of sand. And it seems that this one, while the other one was about 2/3 of the inside at the bottom half of the hourglass, this one is more like 1/3. Also, there's a lot of background noise. Is that Mirror?
Sorry.
Mirror, you okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So, is there anything else you want to do with this cube now that you see it that the actual timer does not share the same? Oh yeah, listen in. Go ahead and make a perception check. Guidance, very good, and perception. A 27 to 20, very good. A 27 and a 24. Very good. You guys both approach, quiet down everyone in the ship, and just listen attentively to the cube. It seems to also notice this sound of just slight chittering.
Is it similar to what we heard at the larger cube?
It is indeed similar to what you've heard, yes. But at the same time, probably not as much sound, probably a bit quieter. But similar nonetheless. You definitely notice with that 27 perception check that there are once again the two purple worms, that's for sure. But when it comes to actual movement inside, there doesn't seem to be nearly as much as on the other one, on the bigger one.
Well, they're ordinarily terribly destructive, Kavan says, to Leeds or Hell, so perhaps they're being kept for some sort of plan. These would be perfect to contain them, breed them. Ordinarily, they would be digging through the earth. Perhaps this is the realm of dreams of another domain. I cannot say what she thinks. And admittedly, you all would know her motives better than I. My gods are an entirely different sort.
It seems that when you look over towards Kira and Piter, they don't seem to be reacting to this. They seem to be almost unknown of what could be happening, confused themselves. It seems like it's not only the oath of peace that doesn't let them answer. It also shows that they don't seem to know either. And the Mono says, could these creatures be bred for an endless cycle of oaths of peace, running out every so much time? Vizia says, I haven't heard about any other... like in other worlds, you mean? That is wild thought, but... I wouldn't put it past them.
This oath of peace, it prevents them from doing battle with each other, yes?
Kira says, amongst other things, yes.
Well, what about proxy war, using something else to fight each other on their behalf?
That is pretty much what is happening here at the moment. After all, since the prophecy happened, the chosen of the prophecy, and he points towards everyone here other than you, she says these people were chosen, or they were seen through Versi, the oracle, to potentially be able to solve the Oath of Peace or forge a new one if required. They are aligned to us in a way, says Kira, one of the five gods.
Kavan gestures toward the cube and explains, this could be a part of that. If these were to be all released upon your world at one time, they would be terribly destructive. And they seem to be kept in the cubes, perhaps for breeding?
Isaac says the worms could also be being used as jailers, not to contain as well. What better incentive to stay? What better incentive to stay in prison than having to fight purple worms as part of one escape?
Kavan nods, saying this is true as well. We did seem to hear something else in there with them at the larger cube.
This just thinks for a second and says, that's true. And is there any... We should go back to the cube, the bigger one. See if there's any way any way we can look into it. Elb says, again, how does this help us regardless of what or why this is our path? Regardless of what or why this is our path forward. Visit says, well, if Vith succeeded in looking over, there is no doubt that Viteria is not here, yes? Could she simply be somewhere else? As in, not in the Nether Sea?
It is a strange place. Perhaps she is here in a way that we do not perceive.
If need be, I could try to scry, but that will only be able to be done tomorrow. Although I can imagine she will be protected against that sort of magic.
I'd say that at about this time, Vith wakes up as you guys were investigating this smaller cube. The biggest difference between both cubes was that on the biggest cube, the noise seems to be much more lively. It seems that there's way more movement on the big cube than the small one.
So did we see or know how much time was left on the hourglass?
Or on the other one, or on this one?
Sorry,
on the bigger one.
Yeah, on both, basically.
On the bigger one, you had calculated that it was about. You had made the check on this.
Yeah, I remember.
I believe it was about 300 years. Let me double check.
It was a very long time.
Yeah.
It was 3 centuries. It was still 3 centuries left on that one. On the biggest cube. The other one seems to be closer to the 4th century mark.
The 4th century mark.
Yeah.
And does it seem like in both of those cubes there's more sand in the upper or in the lower compartment? Like
on the biggest cube, it's pretty much 50-50 at the moment. You can easily guess that this would be about five centuries. An hourglass worth 5 centuries.
Okay.
But on the smaller cube, it is. It seems that the hourglasses themselves are all the same size.
So the prisons have been here for longer than the Oath of Peace, at least. They seem to be unrelated completely. However, maybe these other cubes, there might be one that is related to this all.
I could not hazard a guess. As you all say, she is insane. Perhaps she keeps them as pets?
But they don't seem to be relevant for now. These 2 cubes have been here for longer than the other pieces existed. Longer for... Because, how long ago... Because The first
The-
Dragon Wars or something were 100 years ago? But how
The-
long ago did shit hit the fan?
The Oath of Peace was 499 years ago.
Oh, 4. Why do I have 100 years? That's because of Call from the Deep. That's the 100-year thing with the mage there. Keep messing them up.
Yeah, the Oath of
It's
Peace was
500 years.
499 years ago. That's
Okay, so
that's
it
why it's
was.
running out.
Never mind. I thought it was 100 years ago.
Technically, like 499 and 340 or whatever.
So these were actually collected after the Oath of Peace ran out.
Mhm. It seems that some of these have been reset. It seems that one of them has 3 centuries left, right? So it was already. It was probably either. You're not really sure how this works, right? You're not sure if this is a thing that can be resetted or a thing that simply is fixed.
Yeah.
You haven't actually messed with the hourglass in any way, and even then, even if you could not push it by brute force, you don't know if there's any mechanism on the outside that would do it.
Or any spell.
Or a spell, yeah.
Okay.
It is a lot of things to ponder, and sadly there are not many answers just looking at the cube itself.
Because we went to this one now, right?
Right now you're basically going back to the other one, I assume. But yes, you've been to this one and you've been to this one. Sorry,
Yeah.
this one. I haven't checked the others.
Do you want to check the other 2 cubes nearby?
It would only take about an hour if you'd like to do so. I guess there's not much to lose if we do.
As ever, I yield to your judgment. I'm merely your companion.
Let's see what Anzac has to say. Yeah. We can simply say that you guys go around investigating the cubes themselves. Through the time that you spend looking through the cubes, it's about an hour or so, and all the cubes except for the biggest one seem to be of a similar size. All of these small cubes are the same size except for this one. They all have varied amounts of centuries left. The closest one seems to be 1 century left. The one that seems to be the one that's closest to whatever that means, whatever the Argos finishing means, it's less than 1 century. And it's one of the smaller ones.
Okay.
When it comes to the actual sound, it seems pretty much the same thing. The biggest cube is the only one that has any all the cubes have some noise on the inside that you can now recognize as the purple worms, right? At least 2 massive purple worms on the inside. Then you also realize that there's the sound of smaller ones as well, right? But it seems like the biggest cube has way more activity overall than the other ones. The smaller cubes, however, are all the same size, which is about 70 feet on the side in comparison to the 100 instead.
This seems to be a mystery we cannot solve simply by looking at it. Perhaps we should go back to the largest cube or tour these islands?
It,
Oh, and by the way, since you guys actually traveled by boat easily throughout the old map that's available here, there is no sign of material. It wasn't a failed perception check. There is literally no sign of material.
does it seem like there is a place with
Where material should be?
where there seems to be signs there was a cube?
No.
Okay.
No.
I agree with Ezek. Although, let's be careful because of what we've heard about the island.
So you want to go to one of the islands instead? Do you want to go to the island to the north or the island to the south?
Sorry, the one with the three statues.
The one with the three statues?
With the titans, supposed.
All right. Let me get my notes on that island very quickly.
You may wish to tell me what you've heard, likely before my time here.
We heard that the island has a pool of poisonous blood, or has been created with that, or the sea itself has been created with it. We're unsure what it all means, but it's supposedly done by the sacrifice of 1,000 basilisks. So there's foul magic in the area.
Basilisks? Well, that would explain perhaps the stone statues.
And the three titans are supposedly one of the strongest beings in this land. And they have indeed been turned to stone by Lutheria, supposedly.
She seems to have a liking for exotic beasts.
You're thinking that she... this is Elsa. You're thinking that she could perhaps be correcting? Either way, the ship itself, it is certainly possible to watch, and I could not say. Okay, either way, your ship approaches the small, craggy island dominated by the grey mountains and black, rocky beaches. Among the mountains stand three incredible lifelike statues, which are similar in scale to the grand colossi of Mitros. Each depicts a muscular man in a pose suggesting shock, their faces revealing a combination of fear and rage. Iron chains bind their immobile limbs and are anchored into the surrounding landscape. As you guys are still on your own boat, not on the island itself, you realize that there are indeed three statues here. They are about 50 feet in height.
Mm-hmm.
Would you like to get onto the island itself? Get out of the others, or are you just looking from afar?
I'd say afar for right now.
Come on, thinking
Other-
about it, and he says they've been turned to stone, but they're in chains. It's I would almost think it's some kind of ritual involving the pool.
when you guys look for other things around, just like looking from afar, keeping an eye out on the island, there honestly doesn't seem to be much other than what I described so far. The island itself doesn't seem to be built in any way that would be like a pool, right? For starters. It doesn't seem like they are sitting or standing on any thing that would contain the blood of 1,000 pacifists. It doesn't seem that there is much of interest on this island other than the 3 statues themselves. It definitely reveals that the 3 statues are all of their faces show great suffering. Shock, fear, and rage. Any way to check for the supposed traps? Vizia says perhaps other monos could detect magical ones?
Yes. I could indeed. If you just give me 10 minutes, I'll be able to detect all the magic around us.
Time well spent.
Didn't you mention? Oh no, he wasn't over. He was overwhelmed for a second last time he did here, but it didn't sort of break the effect. You could still feel the magic, so it does work.
Yeah, you were overwhelmed, but it just like got used to it.
Yeah, for a second I thought it had no effect at all.
No, it did have effect.
Yeah.
It did have effect. It's just overwhelmingly so.
Yeah.
Because everything is meant, right?
Yeah. So just give me 10 minutes to prepare.
Would anyone like to do anything during those 10 minutes that it takes for the cast time to happen? Or are you simply waiting to be safe?
Say wait to be safe.
Asterius is going to watch the water.
Mm-hmm. The water is creepy to look upon. As someone that has been on the Nether Sea before, as you guys have been, you know that this water is incredibly powerful and it can cause permanent changes to the people who touch it. Such it is quite dangerous. Like it seems to be constantly sizzling against the ship itself, almost as if acidic. And it seems to be